Hello, just a quick sound check to make sure everything's okay and vision's all right and all that. I'm noticing one peculiarity, the framing on the video, so I'll sort that out. But if you just let me know, you can see the picture and the sound, and we'll be good to go in 5 minutes. Good evening everyone and welcome to In Studio Live, the 71st edition. Right, have I got the framing right? Yes, I have. My first attempt at framing the camera gave me a flat head, which might have been considered an improvement, but better have the framing right. So welcome to the show folks, and tonight we're looking at lenses. So let's just get underway, shall we? The usual little bit of admin right at the start. If you find these shows helpful, if you've been watching for a number of weeks, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you get notified of future live streams, because we're live here every Sunday night. And also please like and share. And can I just say about sharing, it's absolutely brilliant, those of you who've been sharing my Facebook posts, promoting it all, but there's another way of sharing which will really help, and that is, instead of just sharing the link that I have in Facebook, because I know some people have tried to do that, as it doesn't work, there's no share button in Facebook. If you actually use the share button link within YouTube, that tells YouTube that, oh, this is something worth presenting to people because people are sharing it. So just a little thing there. But anyway, thank you to everyone who has been sharing details of the show. I really appreciate it each week, those of you who are doing it. And thank you to everyone who's a member of the Facebook group. If you aren't a member of the Facebook group and you're watching this, why not? Why aren't you? Just go and follow the link down below, because the two really do go hand in hand. It's where we carry on the conversation during the week, and it's where the discussions on there feed into the live stream. So the two work together on that. So go and join it, and you can also sign up for my newsletter whilst you're looking at those links. Right. So what about the show? Well, I say this every week, and it's true it is an interactive show, and that means I'm monitoring the live chat here at the that's going on alongside in YouTube. So please add your comments in there. If you like something, say so, etc, etc. Again, from my point of view, that all sends good signals to the YouTube algorithm for if there's things going on in there as I'm talking. So what have we got on the show tonight? Well, tonight we have a number of things. As I said, the main theme tonight is lenses, and I'm going to talk about different aspects to do with lenses, 3 different sections throughout the show, if I remember how I prepared it. Some of this is stuff I dealt with last year. So for 1 or 2 of you, this may have a very familiar ring to it. But since then, we've had a number of people join the Facebook group and start watching the live stream who weren't around when I first covered this topic. And it really directly ties in with the before and after challenge exercise for this week. A little task I'm going to suggest you do as part of that challenge. So I wanted to cover it again, and basically I've taken the best bits from 2 previous live streams, repackaged it, reformatted the slides, the usual sort of thing. So it's not entirely just a repeat of stuff you've seen before, but it may have a familiar ring to it. So just to warn you. So that doesn't mean you can stop watching now, by the way. So just keep watching. Right. Yeah, I've got a little bit of studio news about things happening here at the studio over the next couple of months that will be relevant to those of you who are within travelling distance of the studio. And of course, I'm going to be looking at your images, as I always do, providing feedback on those. Preference, as ever, goes to the email ones. I haven't got any from the before and after challenge this week because we were on a catch-up week. Long story, if you don't know why, watch last week's live stream. But I didn't set a a before and after challenge exercise last Sunday to give people a chance to catch up. And for me to catch up with something else as well after a couple of things went wrong with the live stream. And of course the Facebook ones. Now priority is given to the emailed ones. Facebook ones come at the end simply because I don't have as much information on that. So that's just the way it is, folks. If you want your images to have priority, then email them to me and the links will be coming up as we go through. I am going to present you with a new challenge as part of the before and after challenge, a new exercise to do with that, which I recorded this week. And of course, at the end, it's the member photo of the week. So if do keep tuned in till the end, because it might be your photo that I'm covering, that I'm talking about. Right, so feedback. And as I said, I prefer to spend my time talking about images which are emailed to me. There's a number of reasons for that. I get more information, more EXIF information on there. I get higher resolution. I can check things. I can give you better quality feedback. So if you've got an image, a good image that you're posting to the Facebook group, yes, I'll still talk about it. I'll pick one or two from there, but I will give priority to the ones which are emailed to me. And I've only had one this week emailed to me. So let's head over to Lightroom and I'll talk about it. So here we are in Lightroom, and this is it. This is from Paul, I believe, from memory. On there. So let's have a look at the image, and this is obviously a kite border at sea. A couple of things to say about this image. First of all, the format that it's in, PNG. Now, it's not a format I recommend for storing images. It's great for graphics on there, but the depth of the bit depth on it isn't particularly high. So it's not a high color depth format. If you want a format that's uncompressed, that's not going to be lossy like JPEG is, I would suggest TIFF and use either LZW compression or use zip compression with it rather than using PNG. PNGs are also relatively slow to open as large files. So I'll be honest, in 2003 when I went freelance, that was the format I used. And now when I come to open them, chug, 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 if I open a PNG file. It's not the best format to use on there. So that's a slight aside on it. This was photographed on a Canon EOS 6D. We can see down here that information. And the 6D is a full frame camera. Fairly high resolution from what I can remember on that. So the resolution we currently have on here is 3000 by effectively 1600 at the moment. Now this has been cropped by the looks of it. Let's have a look at the settings on the image. It looks as though it's a fairly dull day when this image was made. I don't know whether that's the case or whether it's it's slightly underexposed, or maybe both. But it's shot at 1,000th of a second, and that's good choice for sort of freezing the action and getting the droplets of water on there. F11 ISO 400. Right. I question a little bit F11. You might, with something like this, have been able to drop down to F8 and then give yourself an ISO 200 on there. I can't see much noise on the image. So there isn't particularly a noise problem with it, but generally it's good just to keep your ISO as low as possible. Although I do know that the 6D is pretty good with noise anyway. So at 400 you shouldn't have much trouble with that. Prime lens as well. So that's my suggestion, down to f8. But if you know your lens is sharper at f11 rather than f8, then that's the correct setting. Right, okay. Looking at the composition on this image, I'm a little bit bemused by the crop on it. I think I know why you've cropped it as you have. I think what you've tried to do is get the horizon on a 1/3 line, which is good. But let's analyse the image that we're looking at here in terms of composition. What is it about? It's about a kite border. I am assuming his kite's somewhere up here, maybe a little bit further up, I'm not sure. So I'd like to have seen the kite that's pulling him along with it, rather than just these lines going out. And the bottom part of the scene's adding less to the image than the kite would. So I would have aimed for the horizon towards the bottom of the frame, maybe the 1/3 or even smaller of the sea part, and go with more sky, just to be able to put the kite in there with it. And similarly, I would probably have put him a little bit more towards the left in the frame on there, so that he's more moving into it. At the moment, he's just a little bit too central for my liking with that. It looks as though it needs a little bit of help in post-production as well. So let's go over to the develop module and let's have a look at that. Well, as I said, I think it's a little underexposed, and we've got a lot of space up at the top here to be able to bring that exposure up. And that's already starting to look a lot better for me. Now, it's all looking a little bit grey with that, so I'm going to use the dehaze slider, which not only removes haze, but it does sort of add a bit of colour and contrast back into a shot. So watch what it does to the sky as I bring it up. You see we've now got the colour brought back into the sky, but it's kind of oversaturated down here. But there's a little trick I can do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go even further with the dehaze and then wind it back on the saturation just a little bit. That's probably a bit too far on the dehaze. So I bring it back to about there. And then on HSL, if I find the blue on here and just bring that up a little bit, and same with the aqua, we're starting to get that sky looking a bit more interesting on there. There appears to be a bit of a loss of detail in the black suit on there. So going back to the basic, what I would do is use the shadow slider just to bring that up and maybe bring the blacks up just a little bit so that that detail, yeah, we can see a bit more of the detail. We've got, if I toggle that on and off, you can just see there are a little bit of plugged up blacks in there. Nothing too much to worry about. Oh, excuse me. So that would be the processing. Now, the crop on this. So as I said, I don't think the left-hand side's adding much to it. I don't think the bottom's adding much. So I'd have gone with something more like that, but with more sky to it. And that looks a little bit more dramatic, actually, because what you can't see, no, too far with the crop. What you can't see is just how close to the shore those waves are. But something like that, yes, I know I've got the horizon in the middle at the moment, but if I'd been able to get more sky into the shot, that's what I would have done with it. So either gone with something a bit more like that, but with the kite up at the top. So before and after, and remember this doesn't do the crop. That's before on the colours and the processing, and that's after. And we've just brought that out just a little bit to bring that detail in there. So that's the suggestions I would have on there. So that's the sort of level I can go into on the images which are sent via email, folks. So please, if you've got images you want me to talk about, then do email them to me, because I can go into so much more detail as I did there with that. Right, anyway, let's move on with what we're looking at tonight, and a little bit of studio news. You may well have seen in the Facebook group from yesterday the fact that I have put back onto the schedule the water splash night. Now it's already on the schedule. I never know whether it's a hard C or a soft C on that. I tend to end up with the hard C. Anyway, the schedule, because when I first put it on for Friday the 21st, it sold out before I even had a chance to advertise it. So I've put it back on, and again, before I had the chance to advertise it, one of the 3 places has gone. Now, with a lot of my events at the moment, because of the COVID restrictions, the maximum number of people I can take is 3, which means I have to fill the event before I can actually run it on there. So I need 2 more people for this second running of the water splash night to happen, and the model is Tatiana. Now remember that name because I've already posted some photos of a shoot I did with her this week in the studio, and that's exactly who it is. Fantastic model. So do check it out. But you'll also see her in a video I'm going to play in a short while on there. So that's coming up on the 20th of May. The link on the Facebook group and on my website to be able to book your place if you are close enough and want to join me on that. For those of you who aren't close, I'm running something, it's the first time I've done it this way, but it's a course I have run many times. My Introduction to Digital Photography course. I sometimes call it Introduction to DSLR Photography course, and sometimes Digital Photography course, and it's now gone to digital because the future is mirrorless, and DSLRs are becoming sort of end of life, really. I think it was Sony this week, it was announced that they're not producing any more DSLRs. They're going, all their future products will be mirrorless, not DSLR. And I wonder how long it will be before Canon and Nikon do the same. But anyway, that's beside the point. This particular course, the way I'm running it over Zoom. Now, I have the ability to do a high quality, I believe, Zoom feed, but live, so that you can interact with me as I'm doing the course. You can ask questions as we go through. I will be recording effectively my end of it each week for archival purposes, and in case people miss the session that they've paid for on that. But it's 8 sessions. Not only that, there's the 8 sessions, 1 a week for 8 weeks. You will get some one-to-one time with me. I say one-to-one time. I'm debating yet, and this will depend on the participants, whether they want to do the image feedback as a group or individually on there. And I think that will also depend on how many people sign up for it. If I've got 30 people signed up, it will be done in small groups. If I've got 2 people signed up, I might do it individually, or I might do it in pairs or whatever with it. But because I'm doing it over Zoom, it means that wherever you are in the world, you can come and join me on this. There will definitely be one-to-one mentoring with it as well. So you'll have the option to have some time with me, particularly towards the end of the course, where we can discuss where you go further on with your photography. So it's really designed as a full course to really get you up to speed and take your photography to the next level. We cover things like really getting to grips with the exposure triangle, understanding composition, really understanding things like lenses. Now, some of what I'm talking about tonight has been lifted from there, but it's just a small part of it. We're going to look at image management, and all those sorts of things come from this, and I will be available to answer your questions as we go through. So I'd encourage you to think about joining me for that. It's not a cheap course. It's £170 or £150 if you happen to be an Academy member. So worth joining the Academy just to get the discount on that, to be perfectly honest. But there you go. So there's that. Those of you who are close by and are more experienced and want to have some time in the studio, either one-to-one or as a mentored shoot, I've got Millie Gray joining me at the studio on the 26th of June. And it's basically a book by the hour session. So if you enjoy working with models, maybe you like using speed lights, or maybe you like using studio lights, you can come along, book an hour with her. If you want to pay an extra 20 quid, you've got me for the hour as well. I'm not modelling, by the way, but I'll be there to actually assist and provide active input throughout the shoot, advising on lighting setups, posing, shooting styles, and all that sort of thing. So that's coming up on the 26th of June. So those are the ones that are on the calendar so far, but I've also got some other things planned. Again, for those of you who are close by, I'm going to do an introduction to studio photography day, a full day in the studio with a model, introduce you with all the different things. And that I'm going to, again, do that maximum of 3 people. So you're going to get plenty of time working with the models on that. I'm going to do a day introduction to video and video editing, looking through the techniques, understanding the basics of that, how to use DaVinci Resolve to edit, and those sorts of things. A little bit about microphones as well on that. And I'm going to do an art nude night, again, limited to 3 photographers, so it's very much plenty of time with the models, with the model working on that. So I know that's not relevant to a lot of you, but I did want to talk about it for the benefit of those of you who are close, who might be interested in joining me for one or other of those events. Okay, let's start talking about lenses and focal length. Excuse me. Nice cuppa. Right, so focal length. What is focal length? Well, scientifically speaking, focal length is the focal length of a lens. The focal length of a lens is the distance from the lens that light from an object at infinity will converge as a result of passing through the lens to a point of focus. Really simple, isn't it? Except it's not. That might be a scientific definition, but it doesn't really help us as photographers to understand what focal length is all about. So the way you'll normally see it described is using a diagram like the one over my shoulder here. The trouble is, it's absolutely impossible to draw a diagram which explains focal length. So here we've got an object at infinity, a model at infinity. The light, therefore, is parallel coming from her, goes through the lens, and it converges to create an upside down image, and the distance away where that's in focus is the focal length of that particular lens. And that assumes there's one bit of glass. But that looks very confusing, because you see you've got this bit here in the middle, which looks as though that's the focal point. It's not. So maybe if we draw it a slightly different way, draw it like that, where the light from one point goes through and reconverges, makes more sense. Except now these lines that should be parallel are no longer parallel. So we can't win on this, but that's technically what the definition of focal length is. It's how far, it's the distance from a piece of glass to where it's focused. In reality, we've got a simple definition of this, because in theory, a 300mm lens would be 30 centimeters long, or a lens which is a 500mm lens would be half a meter, ridiculously long. In practice, that isn't the case. So why isn't it the case? Well, it's because it's not just one piece of glass, and we have these focusing elements which bend the light and do all sorts of clever things with them, and they're there to shorten the lens with it, so to make the lens a little bit more manageable on the camera. So our simplistic definition of focal length is it's a number in millimetre that represents the area that the lens can cover. And the smaller the number, the wider the angle of view. The bigger the number, the smaller the angle of view, therefore the closer the objects appear. So that's why it appears to, we talk about zooming in. And in reality, it's not zooming in, it's just saying, I'm only going to photograph that little bit of the scene that's in front of me on there. So, the other thing to keep in mind with lenses is if you've got a smaller sensor than the standard 35mm full frame sensor, it just means that less of the image is going to be recorded. It means that bit, all you're going to record is the bit in the middle. And all that means is it means that your image appears to have been created with a lens with a longer focal length. That's what it appears to be. It's not, that's a simplification. So there are other things going on, as we're going to see a little bit later what some of those are. But in practice, what it means is that if you've got a crop sensor, you're just going to see the middle bit of the scene. So in this illustration, the red rectangle is the full frame. It views the whole of the scene, and then these different crop sensors only see different bits of it going in. So that's the difference between that. So what does that mean in terms of focal lengths? Well, because of that crop factor, because that you're only able to record the middle bit, it means that we're not comparing apples with apples when we've got lenses of the same focal length on different cameras, because the sensor sizes are different. So we tend to convert to what's known as 35mm equivalent or full frame equivalent lengths. And how do you do that? Well, it's all about finding your crop factor, or FLM, focal length multiplier. And you multiply your actual focal length by that to give your 35mm equivalent. So I thought I had another slide after that. So for example, if you're shooting on a Nikon with a crop sensor Nikon, which has a crop factor of 1.5 with a 50mm lens, that is behaving as if it had got a 75mm lens on the camera. In other words, 1.5 times 50mm gives 75mm. So that's what focal length is. And I just wanted to give you that little bit of a grounding in it because it ties in with the exercise I'm going to set you in a short while. Right, let's have a look at the chat, what's been going on in there. Right, so what have we got? Yeah, I thank you for the things with the edit on that image. Peter saying that he would crop the right side to make the person the subject. I quite like having that space on the right side of that image, Peter, so that it's got the space to go into, especially if the kite was in there, because the kite would be over on that right side and that would give the balance on it with that one. So I think that's it for current chat. So the before and after challenge. I just want to say, again, I say this each week, if you are new to this, you haven't started yet, don't let that worry you. Just do it at your own pace and have a go at the challenges in sequence. Do the before images before you do anything else, if you haven't had a go at this yet. And I would encourage, there's a few of you I know on the chat watching this who aren't doing it, who might benefit from it. If you are one of those people, you think you might benefit, and you think, oh, it's a bit late to join it now. Or maybe you're busy at the moment and like to do it in the future. Again, that's not a problem. The videos are going to stay up on the YouTube feed. I've done it this way, so you can always do that challenge at any point in the future. But do the exercises in order, because they do build one on top of the other with them. Just work your way through them. And for those of you who are doing it, I know some of you said you were going to have redo some of the challenges on the week off that we've just had. Did you do it? Did you get on? How did you get on with that? Do let me know on there. So feedback on the images this week from it. Ain't got any. But so far, the challenges have been to create your before images of a location. And we've got videos to help you do that. Then challenge 1 was to do one subject with 3 different types of composition. Challenge 2 was making sure you know how to freeze and blur action. Challenge 3 was all about aperture and depth of field, about controlling how to get the background out of focus or to get it in sharp focus. And challenge 4, that's this week, is all about lenses and focal length. Surprise, surprise, because I'm trying to get these where I can. I'm not going to be able to manage this every week, to tie in with the theme of the exercise that week. So this week it's all about lenses and focal length on the challenge. And as a result, I have a little video to show you, recorded this week with Tatiana, who, as I said, is going to be the model for the first of the water splash events at the studio. So sit back, folks, and enjoy this week's challenge video. Hello, welcome to exercise 4 in my before and after challenge. Today we're going to look at lenses and focal lengths on lenses and how that affects our image, both in terms of distortion and in terms of foreshortening. Hello, welcome to In Studio. I'm Ian M. Butterfield. In this video, we're looking at lenses, foreshortening and distortion, and I'm joined by model Tatiana for this. She's kindly agreed to help me with the exercise. The aim for this shot, this particular exercise, what I want you to do is to go through all the lenses that you've got. If you've got a big collection, then go through them all. If you haven't, you've just got one and it's a zoom lens, do it at its widest angle, its most telephoto, and somewhere in the middle. If, like me, you've got a selection of lenses, go through all of them and cover the full range of focal lengths on your camera. First thing you need to do though is you need to get the settings dialed in for your camera. So what I want you to do is choose about 50mm, sort of standard sort of settings that you would use, standard zoom that you would use on your lens, and then find a willing subject. And I want you to take a photograph of them and frame it head and shoulders, so from about here to there, but have something interesting in the background. You'll see why as we go on. So let me get that shot on here. Now let's have a look at the settings. Set that to 50mm. I'm framing this up with head and shoulders, Tatiana on one side, I've got the building behind, and I can see f8, ISO 500. It's a bit dull here, and 100th of a second. So I've got that dialed in manual, so let's just take that shot. So having got that one shot, you now need, if with your lens, if it's the only lens you've got, go to wide angle and take the same image again, but this time keep your subject the same size in the frame. So that will mean on wide angle coming in closer to take the shot. So here's what I get on this one. So as you can see, there's a certain amount of distortion in there. Now let's go to the other end of the lens. On mine it's 105mm. I want to keep Tatiana the same size in the frame, so that means I'm going to have to step back a little bit. And that means shooting from about here. And you can see with this shot, there's less distortion and the building behind looks closer. And that's the aim of the exercise, to go through your lenses to show that. Keep your subject the same size, but let's see what happens to the background. Now, if you've got something like a super wide angle lens, such as I have, then try doing that as well. Now with this, mine's 12mm, so it's really a very large, a very wide angle shot. I'll just put my lens down out of the way, take that off. For this, I'm going to have to come in really close. So here, 3, 2, 1. And you can see that image is really distorted, not flattering at all to Tatiana. Now, if you've got a telephoto lens, you can do the other end of it as well. I've got one which I can shoot at 200mm and 400mm. So let me change the lens and I'll see you down the other end of the park for that one. So now I've got the 200mm lens on the camera, and you can see to take the shot this time I need to be further away. So here we go, 200mm, 3, 2, 1. But I've also got a 2x converter, and if I put that onto the lens, it makes it into a 400mm lens. And to create the same shot, now I need to be further away again. I need to be all the way back here. So now with the shot, 3, 2, 1. I hope you can see from that image that the background is very much out of focus. That green rectangle behind is actually the front door of the museum. That's the effect of foreshortening. So the exercise for this week is I want you to go out with your lens. If you've only got one lens, one zoom lens, do the shot at widest angle, somewhere in the middle, and at telephoto. If you've got multiple lenses, as I have, use the whole range of them. So what do you need? Well, you need your lenses, your camera, a helpful model. If you haven't got the model, try a family member. And if you haven't got a family member, maybe you've got a small teddy bear, and just get somebody to hold it and take a shot of that. Okay, thanks for watching this this video this week. Looking forward to seeing your images on the Facebook group, and until next time, thanks for watching and keep making great photos. Bye for now. Okay, thanks folks. Right, And that's the challenge this week for those of you doing the before and after challenge. I'll post the video as normal to the YouTube channel tomorrow, so that it's there for reference to help you with the exercise. So that video introduced the idea of distortion and foreshortening and how that can be used in our photography. That's what we can do with our lenses. But we saw there how really that both can really mess up the image. That foreshortening is really, that distortion is really unflattering, and the foreshortening can give a very flat look to some of these features as well. So they can be used creatively. Let's have a look at how those can be used creatively and how we can use them to enhance a composition. So here is an image in Porto El Kantaoui in Tunisia, and this is a fountain in front of a hotel. Now, it was a big fountain, but it wasn't this big. What I've done is I've come in close with a wide angle lens, and that's how we create that distortion. Yes, it was big, but it's nowhere near as big as it appears in that shot. Similarly with this shot of my cat, Sam, it's about coming in close with a wide angle lens. Look at the size of his head compared to the size of the base of the sundial that he's sitting on. That's the distortion for you. It can work with people. Now, you saw how not to do it on the video straight up, but you can use that distorted effect to create almost this caricature type image. Now, that was all created in camera. The only bit of video editing I've done with that image is just to extend the background a little bit on it to create the square image. But that sort of really distorted look with the head the size of the body was all created by using a wide angle lens on there, and it's a good effect for creating, it's a good technique for creating that sort of interesting effect. You can also use, it doesn't have to be quite as severe as that, but this is distortion. A wide angle lens, the large hand creates an interesting perspective on the subject, and again, this doesn't look distorted, but it allows us to get into the action, as it were. So we're in close to the weights with our model on this one. But what about foreshortening? Well, foreshortening is using a telephoto lens a long way away from your subject. So these four gulls all appear to be the same size. They were physically the same size, but you'd expect in an image the ones furthest away to appear smaller in the frame. They don't. That's foreshortening. Maybe a better image to explain it is this one of the bus and cyclist. How close is that bus to that cyclist? It looks like he's about to get mowed down by it. But then just look at the length of the bus. The bus looks really short and stubby. That's foreshortening. There's plenty of space between the cyclist and the bus. It just doesn't appear to be there. And if you want a really good example of when this was used, if any of you know Coronation Street, I don't watch it, but there was a villain many years ago called Alan Bradley, played by the actor Mark Eden, and he met his demise by being hit by a tram in Blackpool, quite famously. And the way they did it is they shot it from a very long way away with a telephoto lens and had the stuntman crossing the track in front of the tram. But as the tram got close, he reacted as though he'd been hit and threw himself away from the tram. But it looked as though, because of the foreshortening, as though the tram had actually hit him. And that's a use of foreshortening in the video world. But we can use it in stills to create effects, such as bringing all these columns closer together on this image. But the best illustration of how to use it is on this one. This is Douga in Tunisia, and the temple in the background looks great framed through that, that door frame, but it's a bit small. Wouldn't it be nice if we could make it bigger? Well, we can. And the way we did it, that was shot with a normal lens. If I put a telephoto lens, and as you saw in the video earlier, by me stepping further away, then it will appear to be closer. And that's what it looks like. That's how you can move an entire temple by just how you photograph it. So that's the power of this sort of technique. Just show you that again. That's the normal lens. Look how far away it is. The telephoto lens, just shot from a bit further back, gives you that effect. So that's the power of foreshortening. Right, okay, just to mention at this stage, the live stream is sponsored by, as ever, you. I have this Buy Me a Cuppa campaign going. The link is down below. And if you find these live streams helpful and want to contribute to keeping them on air, then you can do so by buying me a cup of tea. It's basically the YouTuber's friend, Buy Me a Coffee, except I use a link which says Buy Me a Tea. Do follow that link, and a tea costs just £3. I just want to say thank you to those who have been buying me cups of tea, and this week a special thank you to Walter Reynolds who bought this one. So cheers, Walter. A nice cup of tea it is too. So thank you everyone for that. Right, let's have a look at the chat before we carry on with lenses. So what have we got? Right, Tim saying, in the lenses exercise, I assume we stick to the same aperture value throughout, say f4. Did I miss you saying that? Is it correct? Do use the same aperture values, which is why I did that first step, which and I said I'm in manual mode, just get the settings dialed in. I wasn't very clear on that, so yeah, keep the same value throughout. I might re-edit that video before I upload it to YouTube and put that as a caption in there. So thank you for saying that. So the point is, same aperture, same shutter speed, same ISO throughout. So the only thing you are changing is your focal length. And do have a really good look at the background with that. For the ones with the longer focal length, you will find that the background is more out of focus. The wider angle has a sharper background, but it appears much further away. And the telephoto end shot really brings that background in close to your subject. And once you understand that technique, which is why I want you to do the exercise, it's really powerful to help you compose your images and to be able to think, right, well, I want that background out of focus, and I can only do so much by changing the aperture, by changing my focal length. And in reality, it's actually not so much the focal length change that causes that. It's it does to a certain extent, but it's the camera to subject distance that causes it in there, which of course, to keep the subject the same size, you're having to move further away with it. So yeah, go through it and have fun with that one. It's one of those exercises where you don't normally do it, but once you have done it and you look at the images, it then really sort of thinks, that's what I can do with my kit. That's how I can create that effect, because you've done it. And if you're ever in a point where you then want to know how to do it, you've got these images as reference. File them away somewhere, make notes with them, so you really start to understand how you're using your kit. Right, so carrying on. With lenses, and as we've seen throughout all this, different focal lengths cause either distortion or foreshortening, depending on how, which is more not the lens causing it, but how we use it, means that different lenses are best suited for different subjects. Now, this is a guideline, it's not set in stone. As you've seen, I've already shown you a portrait done with a very distorted lens, a very much a wide angle lens. And you can use them for anything, but these are the ones where classically this is what things are best suited for. And all the images, when I say about the different focal lengths, I'm referring to the 35mm equivalents. So if you're on a crop sensor, don't forget to multiply your millimeters by your crop factor to get the values that equate to what I'm about to talk about. So this is the example I gave earlier. 50mm Nikon crop sensor behaves as though it's a 75mm lens, and therefore it's ideal for what you would use a 75mm lens for rather than a 50mm. So let's go through these. Well, if you've got a focal length of less than 21mm, that's referred to as an extreme wide angle. And for example, a GoPro would be that, and most compact cameras just stop short of that on there. So if you're shooting with a compact camera, you haven't got it. With mirrorless and DSLRs, you will find that typically it's a specialist lens on there, as you saw me use in the video earlier. What would you use it for? Well, classically, we'd use it for architecture because it allows us to capture a whole room, a lot of space, and it makes rooms look bigger than they actually are. And we've all done it. I do it with the photos of my studio. I have a couple of photos which are created with a wide angle lens to make the studio look bigger than it actually is for my publicity purposes. So if you've got a 21 to 35mm lens, again, once you've done your crop factor on there, we refer to that as a wide angle lens. Now that's the fully zoomed out end of a compact camera, or if you're working with those. And what would you use it for? Well, typically that's where you're doing your landscape photography with that sort of thing. So it captures the whole view that's in front of you on the frame. Right, 35 to 70mm. This is why I said that 50mm one changes category when you put it on a crop factor. This is described as a normal lens. Why is it a normal lens? Well, it's because 50mm, which is bang in the middle of that, is typically the angle of view of the human eye, and it simulates that. So it's basically middle of the zoom on a compact camera. It's your nifty 50 on interchangeable lenses on there. And what would we use it for? Well, it's just a really good general purpose lens. It simulates what we normally see on there. Next one up, 70 to 135mm. This is referred to not as a telephoto, but a medium telephoto. And this is typically about 2/3 to 3/4 on a compact camera if you're zooming in on one of those. And we would use it for portraiture. Why? Because it's really flattering for that. Anything within that range is flattering. It doesn't flatten the features too much. But it flattens things enough to make your subject look good. So it's a really good lens for portraiture. And then beyond that, anything more than 135mm, we refer to as a telephoto as opposed to medium telephoto. And that would be fully zoomed in on a compact camera. And we use that for wildlife and sports. And here my image, one of the few with a title called My Hero on there. So again, great for wildlife, great for sports, things like that. But it takes you closer to the action. So let's move back to Lightroom and do the feedback on the Facebook submitted images this week. So let's head over there and change. We've not got quite as many images this week, so I should be able to get through this fairly quickly, folks. This is from Mickey. It's in Venice, and this is an image of I was going to say a motorised gondola, but that's a contradiction in terms, really. A motorised boat going underneath one of the bridges in Venice. Nice image, nicely in focus, but it's very misty and the white balance is a bit off on there. So let's go over to the develop module and let's see what we can do. Using dehaze, I can get rid of some of that mist, and then we can increase the exposure on there. I don't want to create too much of a colour cast on it. The temperature, let me do that so you can see a bit better. I think it just needs warming up a little bit on it. I'm going to try with the dropper, see what it gives me. I think that's probably a little too far. I'll just dial it back a fraction on there. It's still quite hazy in the background. Not much more I can do on it, but the fact that I've got the boat more, a little sharper, is nice. What I can do is with an adjustment brush, and let's just reset everything on there and go to dehaze, whack the dehaze right the way up. I've got a low flow on there. I want a large brush using the scroll wheel to increase that, and I can try and just add some dehaze onto that background up there. The more I go over it, the more effect it has with it. Maybe just try and add a little bit of contrast into that area as well, to something like that. And I think we're getting there with that. So let's have a look at let's come out of the, so K takes me out of that. So before and after, that little bit of work just to lighten it up. Now, it is entirely possible, Mickey, that you wanted this sort of misty effect on it. So if that's the case, I'm just going to save my image as a preset, plus, not a preset, I meant a snapshot. Great, on there. I would go with a black and white effect on it, which actually cuts through that a bit, and of course I need to move all this down and reset everything on there. So a black and white would work, but I think we need a little bit more, maybe a little bit more contrast. And perhaps if that was the look you were looking for, that misty look, maybe just go to some opposite dehaze just to make sure it stays in there. And I would probably then go and add a little bit of a vignette in there, high feather it, bring it back just a fraction more to something like that, maybe to sort of simulate the effect that perhaps you were looking for. So if I make another snapshot on there, do a reset, make another snapshot. We've got Mickey, we've got Mickey's version, we've got my black and white version, and we've got my colour version on there. So 3 different ways of approaching that image. Which is the best for it? My favourite is probably the colour one on there, but I just wanted to sort of go through the techniques on that on there. James, I don't know whether you watch the live stream, but I love the low angle and the out of focus foreground on there. I don't know whether that was done in camera or in post-production though. I have a sneaking suspicion it was done in post-production rather than in camera, but whatever, it works. Vignette, I think the vignette's perhaps a little heavy on there because I can see it. Vignettes work best when they're subtle. So I just dial it back slightly on there. But it's a nice location, very slightly underexposed, I would say. If we look at the histogram up here, we've got a lot of space up there. So I would think it needs to be just up very slightly, and maybe, my liking, just a touch more saturation in there. So before, after, yeah, not much of a change on there, but it's a nice composition, like the use of that foreground in it. So well done, James. And this one by Andy, Bluebells. Right, a little bit of advice on this one for you, Andy. I know you said it was a tricky subject. I would try to get down lower so that the camera's shooting more through the bluebells rather than looking down on them. So instead of looking down at an angle like that as you were, if you get right down with the camera and shoot through, what that will do will effectively bring your horizon down further. It will make, you can bring the camera in quite close and have some fairly large foreground bluebells in there, but still keep this interesting woodland background in the shot as well. So that would be my suggestion with it, a lower angle on there. It's nicely exposed, but because of, yeah, change the angle and try and make sure that horizon's not bang in the middle, so it's not a photo of two halves with it. Sonia, again, don't know whether you watch this, like this shot. I would just crop it differently. I'd bring it in a little bit more that way, because the left wasn't adding much, and I like this just acting as a frame on the one side. So I would do that with it on there. Another one, Mickey, a little bit hazy. Again, I'd probably go a long way with warming this up and try and make it much more of a, I don't know. It's a tricky one because if I go too far, that looks horrible. Gives it a green look on there. Oh, by the way, you've got some dirt on your sensor there as well. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit more dehazed and a bit more contrast with it. But then we've got this problem with the sky becoming quite blotchy. Now, it might be because I've pulled the image from Facebook. You might get away with that on the original. If you can't, what we do is, having brought all this in on here, here's the trick. Ignore the fact that it's going blotchy on there. Get everything else right with the dehaze. Bring the shadows up maybe just a little bit, and contrast. So that's really made a pig's ear of that. And we use the graduated filter, just reset everything, and I'm just going to bring that right down to there. So what were the things I had? I had the dehaze, so I'm just going to do negative dehaze on there to counteract it, and I don't think the contrast makes much difference on there, but I can correct for it that way. So come back out of there, so that sorts that out. So I would do that, so before and after would be my approach with it, just to give the image a little bit of bite. Now, I know that my style tends to be a little bit more contrasty than perhaps some people like. So I fully understand, Mickey, if you prefer that hazy look to the image. It's a personal style thing. This is just how I would have approached it. I might be tempted just to bring that down a fraction as well, to something like that with it. So anyway, moving on. Bob, lovely panorama on there. Of course, I haven't got the detail of it because it's a Facebook one, but I can't see many problems with the stitching. That one, there's something around there which I don't know whether that's a stitching or just how the clouds were with it. Can't see any problems really with that at all. So no, just well done on that one. And another one. Here's one of the problems with you sometimes, once you've got your exposure set for the key point, as we talked about when I did talk about it means that some bits of sky might get blown out. So what I would do with that, now this is easier in Photoshop than it is in Lightroom, but I would use the spot removal tool, and with a nice big feather on there, and I would try to just paint out the bits which are blown out like that. And sometimes, yeah, you get that color cast with it. But then if I go to clone, that's helped a little bit with that. And similarly, I could do something similar up there. And that has helped with it. If I wanted to spend a bit more time, I could do something to deal with that. Now, I can't actually put another one there because it's already got an item over it. So here's the trick. If you don't know this trick, it's do it somewhere else, let it find a section, and then just move that over, and then move that to where it's going to help the image the most. It's probably something like that. So there, we've sorted that out on it. But just to show how you can actually repair those areas, and again, before, after. And you'd never know with clouds that's been fixed like that. So just something to try, Bob, with that image. And John, don't know whether you're watching tonight. I know you sometimes watch on the replay rather than live. I really like this, coming down low and getting the foam on the sea with it. Horizon, I would have tried to get the horizon on the third line, but actually a bit tricky to do because this whacking great Eiffel Tower, I mean Blackpool Tower, sticking into the image on there. So I don't object too much where the horizon is on this one. The foreground interest acting as lead-in lines to the tower. That's acting as a lead-in line. Nice image from you, John. Well done. This, on the other hand, horizon. Do fix your horizons before you put your images up for people to look at, because it doesn't reflect well on you, John. We've just seen a cracking image from you. But what will people remember? We'll remember whenever you upload a set of images, people judge you on the worst image of the set. So what we remember about your images, John, is the fact that your horizons are wonky most of the time. And that's what sticks in people's minds. This one, the white balance is a bit odd with it. This is that problem I was having with the Venice ones. So I would be tempted to actually go a little bit more towards the blue side on it, on there. And I think the exposure needs to come up a little bit. It's a really tough one to get a good white balance, because if I click that, it makes a horrible sky on there. And I think we need to preserve the sky as it is. Now, I'm going to try warming it to a point where the sky doesn't look off. Now, there, you see, I've got the foreground, right, but that sky is starting to go off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another graduated filter on there, reset everything, and I'm just going to draw it in along here like that. You won't see any difference. Hold shift to make sure it's on there, and that means I can then control the blueness of the sky whilst keeping the rest a little less, a little more natural, shall we say. Now, if I wanted to spend time using the range mask, I could actually make sure it doesn't affect those bits that jump in there, but I haven't got time to talk about that tonight. So we will leave that one. Moving on. Have I gone through them all? No, I haven't. This one from Kathy. Really nice dragonfly, perfectly in focus on the wings. This is one where it's a bit of a dilemma whether you focus on wings or eyes with it. I'm happy with what you've got on there. Is it worth cropping in a little bit on it? I'm not sure with this one whether I would come in tighter, maybe to something like that. I'm not sure, but lovely shot. Paula, I love this image of the poppy fields. It's a little bit underexposed though, so I would just bring the exposure up, maybe a little touch of contrast to something about there. And I think that is a lovely image. I really do. Well done, Paula, on there. If I had a slight suggestion, I would try and bring the camera a little bit lower so you're shooting through just a little bit more on the poppies, which would then make those a little bit larger in the frame. Make sure you have a hero poppy when you do that though, that there's one that you're focusing on with it, and just come a little bit lower and shoot through rather than that looking down on them. And another nice image here from Petra. I like the tall thin look with this. We've got our beetle on there. I would crop this. I would do a couple of things on the crop. Because we've got the edge of the leaves off at the bottom, I would try and balance it by doing the same at the top, and maybe even bring that in a little bit more on there, so that we end up with something like that. You possibly come in a fraction at the bottom, just to reduce that area that hasn't got flowers in. And I think that might be a little bit stronger as an image. Mickey, your verticals are way off on this. No, I don't mean these on there. They're meant to be off, but actually the verticals on the buildings. Now I know what's happened here. You've got these, of course, made it difficult to get the verticals and horizontals right. But if we just tilt this until those are right, I think is round about there. There's a bit of an optical illusion going on. I'm going to use the transform to do it, and I'm going to use guided, and that's definitely a vertical in there, and that I think is vertical there. So we end up with something along those lines like that. With it, I like the silhouette. I'd be tempted just to push the contrast even more, bring the midtones up, bring the blacks down so that that silhouette is working, and just try and protect those highlights. Now, if on the raw file, you'd be able to bring those back better than I can on the highlight, on the JPEG on there. Again, this is what I was saying, John. You can produce some fantastic images, and then you bang one up with a wonky horizon with it. So we've got one here. It's slightly underexposed, but it's a really nice shot with it. Nicely framed, nice horizon, which appears to be straight. Let me just double check. Yeah, I'm not going to complain about that. It's a lovely shot. Well done. Petra, your tomato tree or the tree within a tomato on there. Nice fun shot. White balance is off though. I think you'll find that that's more like the real colour on there. So just in the edit, just get your white balance right. That's the danger of using auto white balance on there. And Ruskin, more dancers. Now, this is difficult to tell with the focus on this one, with it being a Facebook image. I think the focus is sharp, but I'd love to have seen the high resolution version of this to know exactly which characters are in sharp focus and which aren't. Really like the shot, well composed. That low angle with it really works for it as well on there. And the three drummers one side and the dancer on the other, the whole thing just really works. But I'd love to have seen the high-res version of that. So just to say, Ruskin, if you watch this, don't be afraid to submit the images through the email address feedback@ians-studio.co.uk, and I can give you much better feedback on the shots on there. So, but thank you for submitting it. I think that is the last of them. It is. So back to the PowerPoints, and on we go. So let's see what's been going on in chat, and what have we got? Tim saying if I made the lens exercise more complicated by giving attention to changing the lens aperture value as well as the focal length, yeah, no, the whole point of not making it complicated and keeping the focal, keeping the aperture the same is just so you can isolate and see what the effect of focal length is. Once you start changing two variables, you're not going to know what has affected that background on there. So by just having one thing varying, that's the exercise from 2 weeks ago was the corresponding one of just using the focal length. Now, in practice, when you're out doing a real life shoot, once you understand both, you can use both techniques together to get the result that you want. But when you do it as an exercise, it's important that you do them in isolation so that you understand what each individual component adds to the image, what it controls, and that's why I've separated the two on that. Right. Don't think there's any more on there. So our member photo of the week, big drum roll this week is probably no surprises, but it's the poppy field. Wrong name on there. It's not Barry. I forgot to change it. It's Bottas. Bottas. I did get it right on here, so that's how it's going to appear on the banner this week. So I will be updating that very shortly as the banner for the Facebook group, and do keep submitting images to Facebook as well as to the email address, and it'll be your image next week that's the banner for the Facebook group. So nothing new in the chat. So just to announce, next week we are going to be looking at high dynamic range, HDR. I know that was a request from Walter, who I don't think is watching tonight, so hopefully he'll watch next week when I cover it. I'll look at some of the techniques to do with that, and how you produce HDR images. So all that remains for me to say is thanks for watching, and until next week, keep making great photos. Bye for now. Right, time to shoot the cut down ending, the alternative ending on this. You've just been watching the cut down version of Ian's Studio Live. The full version is now in my academy, details over my shoulder, only £6 a month, £60 a year, where there's lots of resources and training in there, so do check that out. But thanks for watching the cut down version. I'll see you next time either in another cut down version, or why not join me live on a Sunday night and you'll see the full thing. So until then, thanks for watching and keep making great photos. Bye for now.